Okay, guys, thanks for joining me. Welcome to Spooky Gal's Corner. I haven't done a interview in quite some time as I've been off the grid for a little while, redoing some podcasts and redoing the blog, which is now up to date. And today, I am introducing a new friend from Crypt Tube. If you want to say hi to everybody.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Me and Crypt Tube are actually going to do a interview with you guys on our favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes and why they're so important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. My first episodes that I really enjoyed was Oils Well That Ends Well, season 5. This one pretty much features Priscilla Presley, John Kassir, who's also the voice of the Crypt Keeper, is featured in this episode, and you also have a couple of other amazing actors that are part of the episode. So, for example, if you were watching that episode for the first time, it was the first time you actually see John Kassir do an actual acting role within Tales, and it was really cool to see the voice of the Crypt Keeper actually doing a live action role, and you actually can sometimes hear his Crypt Keeper laugh or his voice as he's acting in the episode. The story itself centers around a group of con artists who try to one-up each other in order to swindle each other out of their money or out of their life savings. And it's just constant twist after twist. And it all comes to a full circle when, at the end of the episode, we have Priscilla Presley, who gets swindled out of her money by the group of men who, they're very sexist men, and they try to one up her and they take her money. She just says fuck it, and then she just goes and throws her cigarette out in a crude puddle of oil and just blows them all sky high. And I think that's a great comeuppance.
Everybody who is familiar with the series knows that Tales from the Crypt, it features a lot, and I mean a lot, of famous faces in Hollywood. You got actors, you got directors, you've got the voice of the Crypt Keeper himself. And if you actually look on an IMDb page of his, it'll show him featured in all the episodes, but he's not always there in the flesh, so to speak. People nowadays, if you're looking at Hollywood, you have some of the biggest stars today that got their start on that show when they were just getting familiar to Hollywood. Demi Moore is one that I always remember her from season 1.
Well, Demi Moore is definitely one of them. You also had John Stamos, you had Jeffrey Jones, Anthony Michael Hall. You had a lot of A-list actors who either did a cameo appearance or had a starring role or did some kind of directing for the show. And I think you remember mentioning Demi Moore for that episode, Dead Right. Fun fact is about that episode is that Demi Moore was not originally cast for that role in that episode. It was actually Jennifer Tilly. Yeah, Jennifer Tilly had an audition for that role, and a good friend of mine actually tweeted her about that, and she mentioned that she had auditioned for the role, and then there were some conflicting issues. Demi got the role.
I remember Brad Pitt being in one as well.
Yeah, King of the Road.
Yes.
Brad Pitt had already established himself with Interview with the Vampire. Yeah, he's already established himself as an actor, and he decided to do Tales from the Crypt. And because basically with these episodes, Tales was used as a way of separating themselves for that one episode, separating themselves from the type and the genre to do something a little different in the horror anthology.
Exactly. I think that draws back to them featuring also comedians. They had, I believe, Sam Kinison was featured in one as well. Yeah, he's best friends with Rodney Dangerfield. He played in Back to School as one of the teachers, but obviously you hear his voice, and anybody who knows stand-up comedy should know who Sam Kinison is. He's very loud, very vulgar.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam Kinison, the episode was season 2's For Crying Out Loud. It was absolutely a great touch to have him play the main character's conscience.
Now, mine are in really no particular order of most favorite to second favorite. I'm just going to do them in just whatever order I had written them down at. One of the very first episodes I'd ever seen from the series when I was very young was obviously in season 1, in All Through the House. And this was obviously, it was a Christmas episode. And what's funny about this is that I believe there was a CD that came out that was related to Tales from the Crypt, and it had the Crypt Keeper doing his own versions of Christmas songs. Very scary little Christmas, exactly. This one basically featured a mother and daughter in home on Christmas Eve, and the mother, played by Mary Ellen Trainor, she's planning to kill her husband on Christmas Eve for his life insurance money, and I think she's trying to run away with a younger lover. Her plans don't really go to her plans when she ends up killing her husband, but on that very same night, there's an escaped mental patient that gets loose, and he's dressed as Santa, and basically ends up targeting her in her home. And what I really love about this episode isn't just the story behind it, but the pure sheer terror facial expressions that are shown on this mother. It really just plays off the whole typical image of like an unhappy marriage and society from a woman's point of view, I think. The ending is what everybody needs to look out for, because we're not trying to give away any, spoilers to any of you who haven't seen these episodes. You really need to see them, because just us explaining it to you does not really fully give the idea of how awesome this really plays out. When you see the little girl, her little girl's actually communicating with them, because she's like, oh, Santa's coming, and you see her reaching through her window for the killer. And then the next shot you see is the mother running into a room, and she's gone, and the mom's freaking out, thinking something happened to her. She races downstairs to see her little girl standing at the end of the staircase by the door. And she's like, she has a moment of relief, and all you hear is her saying to her mom, see, mommy, I told you Santa would come. And you see her holding the hand of the psychopath with an axe in his hand, and it gets that really awesome, terrifying close up of his mangled face, and that was a cliffhanger. I wish I would have seen what would happen after that, but that right there just is like what every episode, I think, brings to the table. And really, I'll watch it any time of year, honestly. But I do watch it on every Christmas. So
I understand completely, because it's an amazing episode, especially since that was one of the first few episodes that came out for season 1. Because if I recall, I think it was actually the pilot when HBO first debuted it. It's listed as episode 3, but if I recall, I think it was broadcast before the other 2 episodes. William M. Gaines, the creator of Entertaining Comics, because he advised on that episode, and when he saw the original ending, he originally said, you know what, no, this doesn't feel right. She needs to be screaming her head off. The fun fact about that, too, is that Robert Zemeckis was actually married to Mary Ellen Trainor at the time. So he advised her, he's like, listen, William M. Gaines is telling us to, he wants you to scream your head off, scream bloody murder. That's what made the iconic scream from that episode.
Was there like an alternative ending that they were picturing in their head beforehand?
Well, episodes are obviously a direct relation to the comics and the panels that you see in the comics. Sometimes loosely translated, sometimes they're actually closely translated. With this episode, they were actually they were translated pretty closely. As far as I know, I don't know the intimate details as to what the original ending was, but it was definitely less of a scream, as far as I know. The second one I have is going to be A Lower Birth from season 2. Reason being that I like this episode as well is because it's the birth of the Crypt Keeper. What I enjoy most about this character is the fact that he's meant to be creepy, but he's also meant to be your host. So he basically is the Alfred Hitchcock of this series. He wants to constantly let you know that it's okay to be scared, it's okay to have fun though, and he's basically there to lighten the mood. However, he, in a way, his visual and audio capabilities in terms of episodes, in terms of storyline.
The theme music will draw anybody in, and it can tell you a story before you even know it. I believe it was orchestrated and written by one of my favorite composers of all time, Danny Elfman. I remember seeing it for the first time being very little, and I see the gates open, I see the flash of lightning, and we're going into the crypt, and I felt like I was going through my own virtual reality haunted house. And just the way it was all put together was fantastic.
Me growing up, seeing that intro, and seeing the Crypt Keeper popping out of the coffin, it didn't sit well with me when I was a kid. And it didn't help that I had a brother and sister at the time who teased me constantly with the Crypt Keeper's laugh, the music, and all that. So I basically grew up not liking the Crypt Keeper. When I watched Slow Rebirth for the first time, I really, really enjoyed the episode. Not only because of it's basically the origin of the Crypt Keeper and figuring out his roots. You know, basically, it's a corroded tapestry of his family history, and the whole story is based around a circus back in the 1940s, directed by Kevin Yeager, who's also the creator of Chucky and the Crypt Keeper. He's also done Freddy Krueger makeup, Nightmare 3 and Nightmare 4. The story revolves around in the 1940s at a circus, at a freak show, and we meet the freak show owner of Enoch, the two-faced man, and Mr. Sickles. So Mr. Sickles is basically realizing that his sideshow attraction is basically starting to die. The doctor that analyzes the Enoch pretty much determines, okay, he's only got a few weeks or months to live, so he has a deadline, and he tries to keep this information from the circus owner, and the circus owner, played by Louis Arquette, is like, did you really think you can keep that from me? I mean, I paid this doctor to look at these attractions, and you think you're going to keep that information from me? So he's like, okay, once Enoch dies, you're out of here. Eventually, he runs into I forget his name, but he's played by Mark Rolston. He calls himself a doctor and he calls himself a scientist, but he's actually a hustler who's really good at poker. He tells Mr. Sickles, listen, I'll give you. I have in my possession a attraction that you could use. It's a 4,000-year-old mummy named Myrna. But, basically what I want a 60-40 split. I want most of the profits for what you get for Myrna. He basically tells me the catch is that she has jewelry on. She has a necklace on her, and you can't remove it because, it's a prop. Mr. Sickles finds out that the 4,000-year-old mummy is actually an Egyptian artifact that was stolen. And, he stole the mummy. He's using Myrna as a way of getting profit. So when Mr. Sickles confronts him about it, he's basically telling him, okay, so what's the deal here? You lied? What's up with this mummy? Why can't I take the jewels off of her neck? And he basically tells Mr. Sickles, well, Mr. Sickles, the problem is with those jewels is that they're cursed. If anyone tries to remove the jewels, they in turn themselves will lose theirs. And he's like, so wait, you're trying to tell me that somebody will be rendered and castrated? Yeah, exactly. So do not try to take those off. But he goes, okay, you know what? Maybe you should have been castrated, or maybe your father should have been castrated. And then he goes to try to remove the jewels, and then he kills the scientist and tells him, well, too bad for you, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes off on his way. At the end of the episode, he goes and tries to remove the jewels. Enoch, in turn, gets his hands on shears. He just, cuts Mr. Sickles' his business off. Myrna comes back to life, and then Myrna and Enoch, they disappear and leave the circus attraction. And it's not till a year later where police say that a little boy found the attractions in some kind of cave, and then the cops tell the circus owner, "Come follow us, and we'll take you to them." And then we are shown Enoch and Myrna laying in bed together. I'm not sure if they're already dead. When the cops and the circus owner are completely disgusted by what they see, they leave. The last few frames of the episode, we see baby version of the Crypt Keeper, and what he looked like as a baby. And I thought that was a great ending to the episode.
I'm just trying. I wrap my head around sometimes these concepts about how intricate these stories really get, because it blows me away sometimes how detailed they really get. So, we have, and this one is very touching to me because I'm a huge animal lover. Collection Complete. Now, I believe this is from season 1, and it's about an elderly couple, and they're settling into retirement. The wife's husband, he's new into retirement. So he's not really handling it well, and in a complete playoff from his wife, his wife is complete opposite from him, and he's just like this grumpy, bitter man who just expects, this whole old style way of living with his wife, cooking him breakfast and everything, and he doesn't really know her. She spends her days basically tending to and taking care of stray animals that she calls her friends. which
Yes.
he is just he's appalled by. And so as time goes on, these animals just being around him, and now that he's realizing how much of effect that it has on her, because he was always working away from the house, he didn't really realize these animals are kind of like this woman's children. It's her way of getting by day, her reason for living, basically. And so it gets to the husband at one point where he gets so tired of him because they're in his house, they're eating his food, they're invading his space, tearing things up, and one day he just snaps because there was a point where they're sitting at the kitchen table. He's just saying, "Are you feeding that dog a steak?" And she goes, "But they're my friends." She just feels so lost and sad that he does not like these animals, and he's abusive to her verbally, and he ends up being abusive physically to the animals, to a point where he snaps and he ends up killing one of them, I believe, in the basement, and he starts to get a weird fetish for taxidermy. She catches him in the basement, and he's telling her what he's doing with his taxidermy, and he has one of her cats in his hand, and he's about to kill it, and talking about how he's going to euthanize it and do all this stuff, and she ends up killing him. And the best part about this is you see her get up and she's talking. You think that she's talking to one of her animals because she's talking about, "Oh, I'm making your favorite tuna," and we're at the very end, and she's speaking to this entity, and you don't really see it on screen yet. And it cuts out to her talking to, I believe, a neighbor of hers, and then it turns back, and you see her husband with this weird stapled mask thing on his face, and he's dead, but he's sitting in the chair as if he were alive, and she's finally feeling like he's home now, and that, he's not going to hurt her animals anymore, and almost like satisfaction to her, because now they can finally settle down the way that she wanted them to. Kind of reminds me of like dead silence in a scene, where you see the father and you see the back of him, and it cuts to the side back view of him, and his spinal cord is just like in the open, and she's basically controlling him with her hand. It kind of reminds me of that a bit.
You got that element of horror, you got that element of psychological terror. Well, it made you feel uneasy watching some of the things that happened within the episode, but you still had that just desserts ending, and at some point, I believe it was in season 4 or 5. That's when the tone got a little bit more lighthearted. We started seeing a little bit more gore. We started seeing a little bit more humor, and that's when Tales started becoming much more of a franchise because of how they presented it.
The thing about this series is that from the comic books, they actually dive into some things that happen in real life. It's not just all gore and, made up stories. These things can really happen, and they really do when it comes to, spouse abuse, animal abuse, murders.
Look, I actually am going to be tackling a subject very soon on Crypt Tube regarding how Tales would be perceived in today's society, but compared to how it was seen as a comic book within the 50s. Because in the 50s, that's when the Comic Book Code of Authority was created, because of those Senate hearings between William M. Gaines and EC, between the Senate. And they put a ban on certain words like horror, terror.
In my opinion, from what I see, my generation, I'm not too proud of them in a way. I'm from the 90s. I'm a 90s child, but I was in the early 90s. Millennials is what I guess much older people would call us, but I don't really resonate with them. I think I kind of live in my own head in anything from 92 to 2004, because after that, to me, everything just started to get really weird when it came to cinema. As far as horror goes, when they're trying to bring, give new light to older series, I don't really know what today's society is thinking of something old. It's almost like they want to collect it because they think it's something cool to keep or have. And then there's the true fans, but they really don't get it.
Because I remember back, the latest that we've seen the Crypt Keeper puppet in action was in 2012 when he did the FearNet New Year's Eve special. And, if you didn't grow up with Tales from the Crypt, you would not appreciate what the Crypt Keeper puppet was.
I still watch the cartoons.
Yes, the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
But if you never really grew up watching Tales from the Crypt, or it never came on your TV screen, or you never seen the Crypt Keeper for his voice, then perhaps you're not going to have a good understanding about the comic books or the television series back in the 80s, the 90s, on HBO. Some people would be like, why am I looking at a puppet? That's not scary. That's not that he's hitting puns. I don't get it. Like, with people who never grew up in the 90s, who got to experience Tales from the Crypt in its splendor and at its prime, of course, not going to understand why Crypt fans are Crypt fans, in the first place. According to John Kassir, who did a recent interview with Slasher Radio, he said that EC Comics currently do things right. So I can see why they're a little bit nervous about putting it back out there, especially with the way society perceives entertainment nowadays. Like, everyone wants to talk about either whitewashing and everyone has a critical opinion of what gets put out. Imagine if Tales from the Crypt was put out with a whole new subgenre of categories as to what to tackle. Because you remember, with the comics, they tackle social issues. Like, if you had that kind of content being put out on a TV show, you'd have protesters, on Twitter or, Facebook. I think that's where the TV show, if it was revived, I think that's where it could thrive on, because the comic books were meant to be offensive. They were meant to, tug on strings. Because if you were to bring that back in today's society, and you purposely, poke these people with a stick as to these social issues and things that would offend them, or not really offend them, but to really hit home with the social issues that we have here today, then I think that's where the show could be successful.
And I was really excited to find out that TNT, I believe, was going to revive the Tales from the Crypt series, and M. Night Shyamalan was put on to direct, and they decided to cancel the reboot.
Yeah, because TNT had a hard time obtaining the rights from EC Comics in order to use the Crypt Keeper puppet, or even just TNT CEO basically said, we announced it, but we didn't attain the rights yet, so we were going to do it, but we didn't attain the rights yet. We put out a promo from M. Night Shyamalan stating, what their Tales was going to be about. I think we're just going to throw in the towel and just try to figure out what's going to happen with this first. Many Crypt fans, Tales fans, they didn't like the whole M. Night Shyamalan procedure, that basically the way he was going to go about it. I'm pretty sure when he saw the outburst about not having John Kassir or the Crypt Keeper puppet from HBO being a part of the series, that's when he tried to come up with his own version of the Crypt Keeper.
But what did you have for your final favorite?
The final episode that I have as one of my favorites is Three's a Crowd from season 2. Out of any episode out of the entire series, this has to be my all-time favorite. Reason being is because the episode centers around a couple who are just getting ready to enjoy their 10th anniversary. The couple has a friend who once dated the wife, and the husband is never forgotten. And the show starts off with her coming home 3 hours late from, I guess, spending time with a friend, and the husband was at home, was at a hotel waiting to have an anniversary dinner with her, and she came in late, and he had a problem with it. So he questioned her, and she assured him that everything's fine, no reason to worry. However, she shows off a coat, a brand new, stylish coat that the friend bought for her. We see at some point that they're traveling on this boat, and basically, she's whispering in the friend's ear, she's kissing his cheek, and, the husband's watching them, and he's feeling less assured about what she's telling him. Fast forward a little bit further into the episode, and eventually they're in a cabin. He wakes up eventually at night, and then he sees that they're having a private conversation on the deck, on the patio, and he puts his hand on her knee, trying to comfort her about his the wife's suspicions towards the husband, how he's getting a little bit suspicious about what's going on, and then he starts throwing his accusations out at him, at his wife, and then once he finds himself by himself, he decides to start practicing how to use a crossbow that's posted up on the wall. And the friend eventually comes back to retrieve the husband, Richard, I believe his name is, who's played by Gavin O'Hurley. He starts threatening him with the crossbow. He tells him, "Oh no, how was my wife in bed?" Blah blah blah, and then eventually kills him. And she comes back because she's wondering what's taking so long for the friend to go get her husband. She comes in and she finds that he's in her, nice long trench coat that he bought her, and then he proceeds to, kill her, and after he kills her, he pretty much feels good because he's like, okay, well, we've had a hard time trying to make a baby. He's like, well, how about we try for that baby right now? You guys gonna commit necrophilia right after he kills his wife. He's like, okay, you know what? I'm feeling good. Let's try out for this baby again. So he's dragging her body back to the friend's cabin. As he opens the door, the light, he turns the lights on, and then there's a big banner on the wall. Congratulations, you're a daddy. All the friends and family are in the cabin waiting on them. They're saying surprise, and I think it's completely tragic and messed up as to how somebody could be led so astray based on suspicion, and that's what really has me enjoy this episode.
Honestly, I think that, well, I think it kind of relates to, once again, it brings things down to the open. That episode, maybe there's, listeners out there who are listening to this right now that can relate to that story. They've either been the person that is suspicious, or they've been the victim of it. And I have actually, at one time or another, I've been on the opposite end of that, and I have gotten plenty of shit for it, and none of it has been justified when it comes to a relationship and things really not being what they seem. And it's very hard to get that through to the other person's head when they're seeing and feeling something completely different that's not there.
Yes, and unfortunately, that's where some of these issues in terms of spousal abuse and in terms of murder in a relationship, either by marriage or just boyfriend or girlfriend. As a person, as a human being, why would you murder somebody just because you're feeling suspicious about them cheating on you? But it gets to that level. It gets to that kind of level of jealousy, and it just goes to show, how bad someone can get if they just let their imagination run with them.
This episode reminds me of one that I will talk about in another. We'll talk about this in another interview. I'll save it for later. But it's an episode called "The Bribe," which we will get to that another time. By the way, everybody, there's going to be a 2-part series. Yay! Surprise! If you guys haven't seen that episode, by the way, go check it out. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And as for my final piece to this story, it would be Split Second. Now, Split Second, some people might get this confused with the episode Split Personality, which features one of my favorite little short, angry Italians, Joe Pesci. So, Split Second stars James, Brian James. Okay, so it is spelled differently. All right, cool. He was actually starred in a 1982's Blade Runner and The Fifth Element. If you guys aren't familiar with him, go check out those movies. He plays a lumber camp owner who marries this really young, attractive woman. She knows how to make her way around. He becomes very possessive over her over time. She eventually wants out of this relationship because this guy is not who she thought not who she thought that he was. And he's very verbally abusive to his workers and everything, and nobody really likes him. So there's a stranger that ends up at her door one day. He's this bypasser, and he's looking for work. This really young, gorgeous, attractive guy, and she gets basically an eye for him. And she tries to seduce him, and eventually, the weird thing is, the whole time is that this guy is talking to his friends at the camp, and he's going through in his mind, oh, this is a bad idea. You want to stay away from this girl because of her husband, and well, eventually he caves in, and they fool around, and the husband catches them and attacks him. And once the whole lumber camp hears about this, they get a plan together to get revenge because they really don't like their boss, and they all get together with her lover. They get this really good revenge together where he's actually he's inside of the stump of a tree, and they end up just hacking away at him. Taking an axe and taking a chainsaw to him. And to them, that was their own bit of revenge. You can see they take sheer pleasure of killing their boss because of how nasty of a person he really turned into. Keep your friends close and enemies closer sort of thing. Unfortunately, there's been a few accounts in real life where people have done crazy shit like that.
This chick in the episode was obviously bored, as she states in her narration. She's constantly looking for a case for the cure of boredom, and she was trying to find it. However, I don't think she accounted for the fact that she was going to end up with somebody who was so trying to tie her down so hard to the point where like she would want to constantly break out.
I think this is just an epitome again of what the Crypt series offers people. If you guys, I would love to hear what you have to say. So if you agree with any episodes that we discussed today, if they're one of your favorites, comment, like the video. If you guys have another one that you think are your top favorites, let me know as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys know, I'm running my my YouTube channel, Crypt Tube. On Crypt Tube, there's a series of videos that are basically my content is revolved around the episodes. I have crypt discussion videos, so I talk about many different aspects of the television series, things of the movies, and things that we can be offered as crypt fans. I also recently did some video discussion on Tales from the Crypt video game. So if some of you didn't know that there was a video game coming out, there's that video, 2-part video to watch. That way you guys can be a little bit more informed about it.
We're just feeding off of the energy here, people, and I think everybody out there would enjoy it. If you are hardcore Tales from the Crypt fans, please check out his YouTube channel and his Twitter account as well. Would you want to give it one more time to the audience?
Yes, the YouTube channel is Crypt Tube, and my Twitter is CryptDeducator.
And yes, guys, it's spelled just like it sounds.
Educator.
Now, as I mentioned before, the blog's been a little bit out of date for a while, guys, but it is going to be up and running very, very soon. There's going to be a lot of cool new content. And as always, you guys can always subscribe to me here on YouTube. You guys can check me out on Twitter at NoGutsN, the capital N, Glory. You guys can find me on Facebook as well. And please like, comment, subscribe. Check out Crypt Tube, and once again, thank you guys all so much for joining me. And like I said, keep tuned because there's going to be a part 2 of this video. We're going to actually be naming off a few more of our favorite episodes, and I want to thank you again for joining me today, Crypt Tube.
No problem. Take it easy and pleasant screams.
Alright guys, and as always, this is Spooky Gal's Corner, and stay spooky.